Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama is in Lusaka in Zambia on a 3-day state visit at the invitation of Zambia's President Hakainde Hichilema. His trip, which began on the 4th of February, focuses on deepening diplomatic and economic ties between the two long-standing partners and pushing forward African continental integration. Leaders from Ghana and Zambia have agreed to abolish visa requirements for their citizens, a landmark move aimed at facilitating easier travel, boosting trade, tourism, and people-to-people exchange between West and Southern Africa. The two presidents are also exploring an enhanced economic development cooperation partnership agreement and 8 memoranda of understanding to widen collaboration across key sectors. Well, for more insight into what this visit means for African cooperation and what comes next, we're now joined by Dr Eustone Chiputa, who's a Zambian governance and policy analyst. Thank you so much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
From a historical perspective, perhaps, and a continental perspective, how significant is President Mahama's state visit to Zambia, especially given the shared legacies of Ghana and Zambia in Africa's liberation and Pan-African movements?
Well, it's very significant in the sense that Ghana was the first Black African country to get independence in 1957, and from the onset, Kwame Nkrumah, the Ghanaian first president, declared that African independence, Ghanaian independence, would not be complete without the independence of the rest of Africa. And so they, every time before our independence in 1964, particularly both Malawi and Zambia, because others had got independence, the others came much later, like yourselves. But I remember from my reading in history that Kwame Nkrumah, Haile Selassie Ben Bella of Algeria, Abdul Gamal Nasser of Egypt would gather these then young men from countries that were seeking independence like Zambia and Malawi and others, of course, to attend various Pan-African meetings in Ghana, in Egypt, and in various other places, including Ethiopia, of course, where eventually the organization of African unity came to be centered. So Emperor Haile Selassie was equally instrumental in ensuring that these men and women became part and parcel of the Pan-Africanist movement even before they got independence. So Zambia's relationship with Ghana is picked up from that perspective. And in fact, when Kaunda, Kenneth Kaunda and Harimwanga Nkumbula, who were the instrumental leaders in pushing for Zambia's independence, visited Ghana, I think they were given pieces of cloth which they call toga, which you wear
Yes.
across your chest, covering part of your back and part of your front. And it was a type of clothing that Kaunda wore on very, very special occasions. Nkumbula had one, I think Simon Mansaka Pepe also had one. There were about 3 or so people had those pieces of cloth.
Right.
A symbolic
In the
gesture
interest
from
of time,
Kwame
because we're running out of it quite quickly, I'm going to interrupt with your permission. But we did see President
Sure.
Mahama wearing traditional clothing there, and I think the Zambian people needed to understand a little bit more what that clothing was. But that's beside the point. What do you think is going to come out of this visit? It'll further cement this long-standing relationship, but what else?
Yeah, what I see is, for example, the way SADC operates, though, of course, this is a bilateral agreement, it's a bilateral relationship. But I think there is more to be gained by Zambia and also Ghana as well, particularly in artisanal mining, because Ghana has been in artisanal mining from the 1900s to the present with regard to gold. For us, it has been big companies mining copper mostly, but now we have gone into gold mining, and we are having challenges with artisanal mining. So that relationship will help us leverage on best practices that the Ghanaian people have had in that industry. Of course, for equipment, we rely heavily on South Africa. So you can see that while we get equipment from South Africa or we get technology from South Africa, we can also learn best practices from Ghana. With visas having been, of course, now removed, it's a lot easier to travel to Ghana, although, of course, there are no direct flights. You have to either fly through South Africa, Johannesburg, or Addis Ababa, or other places to access Ghana. So perhaps going forward, things should be a lot easier, both in terms of government to government and people to people. And perhaps that will also help us to understand the Zambians, to understand the Ghanaian culture, because Ghana is deeply rooted in our African culture.
Dr. Chiputa, we're going to have to leave it there, unfortunately, but thank you so much indeed for your thoughts on this important visit of President Mahama to Zambia. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.